So obviously this morning we released a video of an incident that could have been very tragic that happened directly behind me in a playground while children were playing from school. It involved a 10-year-old boy who was very well known to us, who was driving a stolen car on this grass and in and around the playground while the children were playing. It sent the staff at the school and the children into a panic, trying to run inside and get back to safety. That incident happened on September 20th, and I'm thankful to report that as of now, we have charges approved against that 10-year-old for reckless driving and for receiving stolen property for being in possession of a stolen car. But this is one example that we need to highlight, because this is the problem that we've been seeing all year. And it has very tragic results. We've noticed this year that the age of juvenile offenders who are very active has gotten younger. And while it had started with the problem of theft of Kias and Hyundais, it has continued into more serious crimes. And this is a situation where a mother, who I believe is a good parent, has been asking the system for help, and the system has been failing her and failing her child. And we need to figure out what the answer to that is. It's disappointing to the community that when police do bring someone like this in, which is our job, when we find someone, we arrest them, we bring them in, that the system doesn't have an answer for what to do with someone this young. And that is the revolving door that we've been seeing over and over throughout this year. And it's an urgent problem that everyone at all levels of government need to come up with an answer to address. It's further exacerbated by a state law which recently changed that'll go into effect in 2026, which will not allow persons arrested by police to be detained at all under age 13. I understand that there's efforts underway to change that law before it goes into effect, and I highly encourage everyone involved to speak up to their elected representatives to get that change, simply as a matter of public safety. There are way too many scenes that I have been to in this city where I have seen children either dead because of a car accident with a stolen car, seriously injured, or shot in connection with activity with stolen cars. And too many parents that have been begging us for help. In this particular situation, we're talking about a 10-year-old that we have at least 30 entries in the Minneapolis Police Department alone, dating back to May of 2023. He had been arrested at least twice prior to this for auto theft related crimes. This boy is also listed as a suspect in more than 12 cases that range from auto theft to robbery to assault with a dangerous, deadly weapon. The remaining entries are mostly related to runaway type cases. The charges for the incident in the playground behind me that were approved today are for reckless driving and for receiving stolen property. In addition, there were charges approved today for an incident that occurred in August elsewhere. In that case, this juvenile, amongst other juveniles, approached a victim while holding a knife in his hand and threatened the victim, saying that he would gut her. "I will gut you," is his quote, the victim stated, while trying to steal the victim's Kia. Charges from that case that were approved today include threats of violence and attempt to commit an auto theft. The mom in this case has been working with Lieutenant O'Rourke. We have been trying to advocate on her behalf, trying to find suitable help and support for her. Mom referred to this entire system, the problem that I'm talking about here, as the devil's playground, because kids are not seeing consequences, and in her words, they're doing this for entertainment and not being held accountable. So it's in the spirit not only to protect these children, not only to protect the community, but to support these parents that are trying, that we're asking everybody involved at all levels to try and help us resolve this. We're standing very close to Reverend McAfee's church, Salem, on the next corner, Reverend McAfee has been personally involved in trying to help a lot of these youth with his organization, 21 Days of Peace. He is not available right now, but he wants folks to know that anyone dealing with a child that's in need of help can contact Salem, contact his church, and they will do everything they can to help support these families. I'll pass it over to Lieutenant O'Rourke just to add to any specifics that he sees as he deals with these juvenile issues day in and day out for the Minneapolis Police.
Thank you. Well said, Chief. One of the biggest things that we see on a daily basis that we're missing is this Minnesota has no system for kids to get detained and be put into a housing where they can be held long enough for mental health evaluations to be conducted. It's a complete loophole that we're missing in the system. It's not being addressed, and for what it's worth, for how it is being addressed, is not fast enough. As we do this, the kids are bankrupting the system by continuing to complete more and more crimes while they're waiting for these providers to reach them out in the environment. That we need to find housing and a way to set it up for these kids to be evaluated and find the correct treatment. Minnesota's got a great restorative practice program. They believe in the ideology and the theory. They've come a long ways with it. They've been practicing it for a long ways. We have a lot of real experts here. We need the housing. The practitioners need to be able to touch the kids.
Lieutenant O'Rourke, are you getting a lot of parents? I know you've been working with this mother. Are other parents crying out for help? Are other parents coming to police saying, what do I do with this child that I cannot control?
I can tell you that in the last 2 years, I have not seen more mothers come forward, more people from the community come to me just begging for services. They're told that, my kid was released, and that somebody's coming. Well, the kid gets to find out that someone's coming, they're on the run. They take off. They're like, I'm going to lose my job if I can't if I have to watch 24 hours a day and fight the influence from the other kids. Mm-hmm. The providers can't get to the kids, and it's really unfortunate. The moms and dads that are out here doing it by themselves are finding themselves hopeless.
Can I ask, one of the things we've covered extensively is that most of these young kids, when they do get in the system, they're found incompetent because of their young age.
Yes.
And then there's nowhere to go.
Yep.
Is that where a key loophole
Yes.
here is?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little?
Absolutely. We have the county attorney's office does work well with us in a lot of respects, but there is this issue out there of a finding of incompetency. It's not that they don't understand what they're doing in the moment. It's the long-term consequences. So they become incompetent. Now there is nowhere to house them. So now there is nowhere for the restorative practitioners to give them intensive therapy and teach them the life skills that they need to produce a better outcome.
Yeah. And that's part of the emergency with this. If we're going to say just by virtue of age these children are incompetent, we're going to continue to have this revolving door where these kids continue to engage in this very, very dangerous behavior that is either going to wind up with them being killed or someone else being severely harmed in the community. And that's the problem. That's the biggest gap in the system right now, and there just is no answer for what to do with them.
What do you think is behind some of this? Is it gang activity or just purely small groups of kids on their own doing it all for fun?
Well, I think life has changed in general since 2020, and we see that in terms of crime, and certainly since 2020 with the way that the dynamics have changed around gun violence, and in particular, again, around the Kia and Hyundai auto theft problem exacerbated by social media. These kids are on social media themselves. They're, showing themselves out here committing these crimes, driving in these stolen cars. And we have taught them essentially that there is no consequence. There is impunity. The kids that are falling into this gap that are being arrested and immediately released prior to us being able to provide as a system some type of intensive supervision and assistance is failing them. That's the difference. I mean, I'm not from this state, but I hear from folks, they used to have a place to bring kids, and that place was closed, and now there is nothing. And so there's definitely this gap. Look, these kids someone like this, unbelievably at 10 years old, is so much at risk that when we are able to take them and bring them in, we can't just let them go. We shouldn't be doing that to mom. We should be able to help in some way because it is so obvious that the risk is so high. And that's why we're seeing, the numbers of, in particular, youth violence against young people skewing so much lower than what they had been before. The number of kids 15 and younger that have been victims of gun violence in this city is higher than it has ever been before. Last month we had one incident where we had 4 people under 15 shot in one incident. That's what was normal, if at all, in 1 year prior to 2020. So it is literally a matter of life and death when we're talking about what's going on with these young kids.
Are we at crisis level, Chief?
It is. It has been. We've been trying to sound the alarm because we see the results of this. We're the ones that are out here on these scenes, dealing with these kids. And at times they're either the victim or sometimes even committing shootings and other acts of violence. Terrible problems around, robbery and other instances. And quite frankly, it's the job of the police to bring them in. It's not the job of the police to punish these kids. We need other folks involved in this vast system that we have to come up with a solution for what is really an emergency with a group of these kids.
Chief, you talk about that. You mentioned in your press release as well. So a 10-year-old who has racked up 30 different contacts with MPD in some way or another, what should be happening with this child right now?
We shouldn't be arresting them and then immediately releasing them back into the same environment without giving mom any support, saying, okay, maybe somebody will call you back in a week or two with some service. That doesn't work. When we bring them in, we need to hold them until we're able to place them somewhere that is sufficient to provide them the support that they need. The other thing that's obvious with this kid, I should have mentioned, that is also another common risk factor that we see besides the joyriding and stolen call problem. A lot of these kids have significant histories of being reported missing, as he does as 10 years old. And that's showing you exactly what was said earlier. Mom has to go to work. She can't deal with, she needs to be able to make money. She can't deal with, being there essentially 24/7, to provide these kinds of supports and deal with, a lot of the other environmental factors that are pulling these kids in without any, kind of positivity to counteract that.
Chief, it sounds like you're working with parents. Is there any accountability held on the parents for this type of behavior? Maybe not in this instance, but
there is when it's appropriate, and this is not a case where that is appropriate. We make referrals all the time to child protective services when we believe there's an issue with neglect, and that is just simply not the case. With this particular situation, and we absolutely will not do that unless we believe it's appropriate to do. This is a case, as there are others, where parents need help. It's not an issue of parents being neglectful.
Did the boy say anything about what he was thinking? I mean, was this an instance of he didn't know how to drive, and so or was it kind of intentional to drive like that?
I'll preface like this. It's still an ongoing investigation. It's not complete, so I can't tell you exactly what he has said or hasn't said, but I can tell you what I've dealt with him in the past. He is doing this strictly for fun. He has no idea what he's, out there getting himself into. He doesn't see the consequences coming. His youth worker that's working with him now, that tries to connect with him on a daily basis, has told him these adult actions are going to come with adult consequences. There's just no other way around it. And he's not seeing it. He needs time out. Yeah. And we need to figure out a way to get that for him.
This doing it for fun sentiment is not unique to this case. This is what we've been seeing all year. This is what we were seeing when we had a real problem with robbery sprees starting in February. And Yeah, it wasn't a matter of trying to steal to get money or property to go buy something. That was another case where we saw this type of activity with young juveniles literally being done for fun. So that is not unique.
Chief, the original motorist was injured in this case from September 20th. Can you speak to those injuries at all? And is this being investigated as a carjacking rather than a robbery?
In this case, it's broken up into two separate cases. That case is still under investigation. Now we've developed new leads, which led to the charging of this case in the playground, and we'll continue to do so.
Just to be clear, though, the August case did involve a knife and a threat to gut the person, but there was not a carjacking charge for that. That was charged with auto theft and a terroristic threat.
And that was a different car.
That's a different car. Right?
That's a different car.
Yeah, different car. Yep. Yep.
How badly injured was the motorist in the September 20th case then?
Do you have an injury from it?
It's just her mental harm. She was just threatened.
There was no weapon involved in that scenario?
There was a knife involved.
Just to be clear, you mentioned that there were 2 prior arrests for car thefts. Is that August case one of those, or is that a different? So is that included in that 30?
We can follow up.
That's included in that 30, yes.
Yeah.
So this carjacking victim that was involved on the 20th, that person is okay, but they were threatened with a knife.
That's correct.
Was it by this 10-year-old, or do we know that yet?
It was by this 10-year-old.
So on the same
Which then is
day-
the same thing from the August case.
Did he threaten to gut this woman as well?
He from the August case, the victim said, "I will gut you." That's the statement the victim gave.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.